Music, please.
Let's see. Where are we at? Oh, yeah, we got to go. We're late.
You're late.
Let's get this. I wasn't even ready with the music. We're so riled up here this morning, folks. Just stay with me. I'm getting there. My goodness, where are we at? Right there. Helps if I turn it up. There we go.
First time. First show. Yes. That music can only mean one thing, even though it came in late. I don't know what it is. It's Bridging Civil Tension here, 21.6 The Net. Bridging Civil Tension. Of course, we feel it's better to build a bridge than to burn one down. Meet halfway, talk, and then go your own ways. Of course, our co-host, the co-host with the most down there in Texas today, tending to a little family issues, is the man, the number one entrepreneur, author, all-around good guy, Phil Wallace. Good morning, Phil.
Morning, brother. How are you?
Good. And of course, sitting here in studio with me, Kent Jones, the other guy, the founder, CEO of 21.6 The Net, is Scott
Man of
Child.
the hour.
You recognize him from the grounds.
Yeah.
So welcome
Good
in.
morning, everybody. Good morning. Figured I'd spend a little time with you guys this morning. Forgot to run off and, bridge my civil tensions.
Yes. And of course, today, Bridging Civil Tension brought to you through the financial support of our good friends over at Gold Shield Services. Check them out at www.goldshieldtoday.com.
Great people over at Gold Shield.
Great people. And of course, today, in black and white. In black and white.
Real quick. So we're going to skip over the hat, bro. You are sharp today. I see.
Right. I got the old fedora on.
I can't whistle, but if I could.
He had it on last week too, man. You missed it.
Hey, Pete, before you get out of here, could you turn up the volume for us?
Pete, I love you.
Love you too, Phil.
And of course, here's the tape in or whatever that he's on. Let's just get a little more. There we go. That's good. How's that, Phil?
We're good.
Yeah, that's much better.
Good here. Yeah, good vision.
Much better. So in black and white, we're going to talk about several things. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now.
Phil, hey, Baba. How you doing? Love you, guy.
Creepy.
What was that? Who was that, man?
That's bridging something.
That's bridging something. So the deal is this, right?
It's like a sexy subconscious voice right there. That's a
sexy subconscious voice. That's right.
So
out there in the world is, of course, we've got the Kyle Rittenhouse trial that's going on. That, of course, in Kenosha, that happened back in 2020 during some protests and riots and things like that. And then I don't know if you were able to find the time, but of course, Colin in black and white, the Colin Kaepernick series on Netflix.
I did watch that.
I would love to get your opinion, what you think on that as well. And a lot of people won't watch it because it's Colin Kaepernick, but it's worth a watch.
I haven't seen it yet. I just literally saw that last night as I was paging through it, and I saw like that boy has a humongous fro.
Yeah. Oh, he's got a great looking afro.
He picked that thing out like 2 feet off his head. That was great. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, he's done a nice job with that.
It's impeccable. Nice technique that he probably used keeping it.
Right.
You didn't incorporate that technique, did you?
I did. The problem is I went to a school in the northwest suburbs, so when mine was looking perfect like Colin's, I would get the "Can I touch your hair?" and then
yes, you can.
No, you can't. Do not. If you have a minority child, please do not touch their hair in school. It's quite annoying.
Unless it's getting done. So
we hate that.
What's your did you get through all of the episodes, or how many episodes you get through?
Just the first one, as far as like the homecoming and the winter formal one. So that's the first one.
Yeah. So what's your take on that?
He's shining light on something that's not really talked about too openly, and it's a mixture of socially how darker skinned people are looked at, or just minorities, but yes, darker skinned people as well. And then it goes into how culturally we're even kind of taught to shame our own. Right? He had the teammate who was like, "She's blue black," right? And so that's where they were kind of shining light on that, because it's something.
I think that's like episode 5 or something.
That's just the one that I watched.
That's
so
what maybe. Okay. So all right, yeah, and we can go there. A beautiful girl. Actually, there's not an ugly person on this show. I mean,
right.
I mean, they're all good looking people. But yeah, so the depiction is throughout this whole series, and it's very interesting to me, is that, and I want to ask you, Phil, because you grew up in kind of the same neighborhood, right? In like suburbia, is so Colin Kaepernick's background is he was adopted when he was a couple days old from his parents adopted him, and they're white, right? And they're white,
and he's
right?
and he's 100% African American.
I don't,
as far as we know. I mean,
as far as we know, yeah.
Okay.
As far as I know, yeah. And so here's the interesting thing, and I gotta see how you feel about this, but throughout this series, it's like, hey, because I'm African American, all of a sudden everything African American fits on me like it's supposed to. Okay, so you have this young man who, by the way, which I didn't know, straight A student, 4.0 in high school, and was actually a better baseball player than football player.
That's crazy.
And I mean, the Cubs were trying to get him, the Yankees. I mean, they wanted him as a pitcher right out of school, and he didn't want to play baseball. Says I don't ever I feel like I'm a visitor there, right? But this kid, I didn't know he was so good of an athlete, right? So the interesting thing is they show this young man who grew up in a White House, and we talked a little bit about this in the green room. And so you grow up eating green bean casserole. You know what I'm saying? You grow up eating.
I was not going to say it.
Right,
Man.
right.
Unseasoned food.
Unseasoned food. Absolutely unseasoned food. And the first time that he goes over to a friend's house, and they who's African American, and there's collard greens, there's all seasoned food, African American cuisine. It's like, hey man, this is in my DNA, and he just starts loving everything. It's like, I've never had food, and I'm like, did you go through the same thing?
Man, I mean, yeah.
You didn't.
I had Florida first though, so I had the experience of like soul food, and then moved here in 7th grade. So I kind of had what is this versus what is the soul food?
Yeah.
Right. So 7th grade, one of my buddies, I stayed the night over his house for the first time, and I woke up and there's deer bacon.
Yeah.
I'd never had that before, and I never had the difference.
Yeah.
That's good shit.
That's good. Right.
But tell me prior to I'm chewing deer when I'm from Florida, I don't know what that is. Right. Or when you get invited to Thanksgiving in the suburbs, let's say it that way, versus Georgia with my family. Gotcha. Is my audio off?
No, you sound good. Sale also down in Texas, just say reception's breaking up a little bit. Of course, we've had a lot of issues this week with internet. And when
is it mine? I could go to my phone if you want me to.
No, you sound
it
good.
was happening on the grounds. It's just internet. It's just the internet. Hopefully, itself. But
try 5G. Sal. Yeah. All right, get out of your flip phone. Try 5G. See what happens. So my question is, because I'm African American, I grew up eating all white food, is what I'm going to call it, right? White food. The first time that you have collard greens, is it like, oh heaven, I'm home? This was meant for me?
Essentially, yeah. It's that first cup of pumpkin spice in the fall for like the equivalent. It's amazing. It's life changing. It's every time I brought my friends to my house and they tried it for the first time, it's like their eyes get big. It's like from Planet of the Apes when Caesar like.
Well, I like
tell-
collard
so-
greens, but they're not the tastiest thing in the world.
Do you
I mean,
tell
who did you have
tell
make
them
them?
what it is first?
Who did you have make them, Kent?
When you try a new food, do you want to know what it is, or someone just says, "Here, try this"? Do you just try it and then judge it afterwards, or do you have to know what it is?
I'm kind of a. It depends on the mood, like right. Some stuff I'm like I don't want to know. I'll just try it. Some stuff I'm like, what is this?
Right. Well, and the reason I ask that is because if you know what it is, you might have a preconceived notion of how it's going to taste.
Absolutely. I do the same thing for my little sisters.
I always tell them, just try it, like it, spit it out, but then I'll tell you what it is.
So this is my little sister who's having a baby shower tomorrow. Nice. But our whole process, when I'm like, try this, she's like, what is it? I won't tell her.
Right.
I have a preconceived notion. Then she tries, oh my God, this is really good. I'm like, yeah, this is what that was.
Right.
Yeah, you just ate alligator.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
you wouldn't know that it was alligator. And then she's like, this is like chicken. Is this chicken? You're like, no, this is
or like frog legs.
Oh, I love frog legs.
Ooh,
chicken, yeah, right. Oh my God, it's like, it's great.
There's a spot in Atlanta, Spanish octopus.
Ooh.
Would have never guessed it was as delicious as it was.
That sounds weird. Spanish octopus.
Right.
Does it speak Spanish?
Right.
It was fantastic.
Habla
español.
So it is. So I sat there watching this, right, as a white guy. I didn't play a black guy during this. I was a white guy while I'm watching this, and I'm just like, come on, Colin. You didn't. It wasn't like the heavens opened up, but obviously I was wrong there. I mean, that's what I was saying, right? I mean, if you've never had it before, which he hadn't. I mean, and listen, collard greens are good. I like them.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time you taste them, and again, it's as Phil says, depends on who you have make them or how they're made. Of course, you got to get some bacon in there. But anyway, what I'm saying is, that's not a taste where you go, damn, that's really good. I mean, it's like the first time you have steamed spinach or cream. You're like, yeah.
But there's like cafeteria collard greens and there's like Georgia collard greens. And when you have like Georgia collard greens versus cafeteria collard greens, it's like
cafeteria collard greens, some mass-produced bullshit.
Yeah,
real authentic collard greens are freaking scrumptious.
Well, I mean, I will say this: I'm not African American, and Walt Shaw, one of my college teammates brought me into Chicago. And his mama gave us a slice of sweet potato pie. I never had sweet potato pie before. Made my toes curl. I was like,
life changing.
Mama's sweet potato pie.
She was one of
his hair braided.
But yeah,
it
was like a slice. I was like, what in the world is this?
Right. It's something.
The only sweet potato pie I knew was on Good Times when J.J. Walker would have it. Right. That was all I knew. Hey,
Dynamite.
It's the truth. I can't lie about that.
Did you try it without actually know? So you tried it without judging it. Just here, try this.
Yeah, have a slice.
And then they told you what it was.
No, they were like, have a slice of sweet potato pie. I'm like, cool. I didn't even know what a sweet potato was.
Did you see the episode where Colin thought it was pumpkin pie because that was he was used to?
Yeah. That was.
They're like, no,
they look at it like,
I love
potato
pie. It looks like pumpkin pie. A lot more healthy for you.
Oh, it's delicious. Listen, so I get that, but it just the way it's portrayed here, and I understand what he's doing, and I try to watch it with a very open mind, but the very, here's the hard thing. The very first episode is starting with the combine, right, and the NFL, and then saying that the NFL is like slave trading. Right, and people are bidding.
Well, those slaves get paid a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, are bidding on these athletes, and then and I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, you fought your whole life to be in that system. You played in that system.
Right.
You're no longer in that system, but now you're going to try to portray it as that.
You're going to badmouth something that gave you a life,
and has given you this platform. Right.
That's
ability.
shitty.
Go ahead, Phil.
He's frozen.
No, I'm not. I'm just letting you guys go. So, because I'm a high paid slave, I should be a happy slave?
I didn't say anything about happy. I just said they're high paid.
No, answer the
And
question,
like
though.
Kent said, that's something they've been striving their whole life to do.
But what you did say was he's high paid. So then my question to you is,
right,
because I'm a high paid slave, I'm supposed to be a happy slave?
You think
I'm supposed to act as if I'm not a slave? I'm not allowed to speak of how I was a slave at one time? I'm no longer allowed to do that because at one point I was a high paid slave.
No, so you're saying that the NFL players are high paid slaves, Phil?
What I'm saying is there's a lot of athletes who have made it who all seem to have a very similar sentiment on how ownership treats them. Not just Colin, I'm saying from LeBron all the way through. A lot of other athletes have said the same thing. So what I'm saying is maybe instead of dismissing it, let's ask ourselves why they feel that way. Why these people who do, as we say, make millions of dollars still feel, man, this is like a slave contract. There has to be something if multiple players across multiple sports have the same type of sentiment versus just dismissing it.
Okay, so name 6 white guys who feel that way.
There might be 6 white guys who feel that way who haven't spoke up, though.
Yeah, you understand where I'm going with this, right? Is number one, they're in a union. They've got a players union that supports them, right, and goes to bat for them. There's collective bargaining. There's a lot of things that have gone on, and
What?
I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but if I am the one to tell you this, and this is new to you, then this is tough. Professional sports is nothing like slavery. Nothing, right? Because you had
your choice.
You had the choice,
right,
to go and play for that team or in that space. Right. It was your choice.
You accepted where you're at.
Correct.
You're not being forced into doing it.
At my work, there are things that I have to do that I don't necessarily agree with, but that's my choice to work there.
When that's your job description, so you choose to do it or leave.
So, Phil, the look on your face is saying you feel differently.
So, okay, so like taking it down a notch, let's say college sports, right?
Yep.
I am Zion Williams, big name, selling out every arena that I go to, all over the country, playing ESPN, bringing in millions of dollars to ownership. That's what color?
That's millions of dollars of ownership to that is
no,
what?
Billions of dollars to ownership that is what color?
I don't think the ownership has color. Does it? I mean, they're
in colleges, I would guess
in colleges, the school
most board of directors are white. Most
the coach, and I love Coach K, is what color?
Yeah,
ESPN that's going to show the game is what color? So he's brought them billions of dollars, and what you're telling this kid is because we give you a scholarship, new shoes, and a hoodie, you should be okay with it. And we should not pay you, even though we own you from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. every night.
I will say that because of the you have to play a year in college that the NBA has put into play, that's you have to do that. They have to do that now,
well,
right?
That's the requirements, right?
But I agree, and then this goes all way back, back into the 1900s with the Fab Five. How much money they made the University of Michigan and the NCAA, and I've said that, and the trade-off has been, well, we're giving you, it costs $100,000 a year to go to our school, so we're giving you $100,000. Really, we're paying you $400,000 to get educated. No, that's a bunch of crap, right?
Because you usually hear that from people who were never scholarshipped.
Yeah,
right. You don't hear that from people who got up at 5, did weights, did conditioning, did class, did practice, did film, did a study hall. By the time you get out of study hall, the cafeteria is closed. You have no food because you have no money because you can't work. But my hoodie is supposed to keep me fed, though.
Right. But Gary brings up a point. But doesn't the student have a choice to forego it and not be a basketball player and just be a regular student?
Right, but this is what I'm saying. But at the same time, though, what we're trying to ignore that for some of these kids and a lot of these kids, what is their way out of their current situation where they grew up in?
Well, that's
athletics.
That's anybody. That doesn't
No, no,
It
no,
has
no, no.
nothing to do with color.
Kent, you're trying to tell me the kids at Crystal Lake South, their only option out of Crystal Lake South is the same as the kids in Chicago. No, sir.
Depends on what part of Chicago and what
Stop
kids.
it. Stop it. The kids in Woodstock or the kids in Huntley, their only and I coach these kids, so their only option is athletics.
Might be for some. Just because your family has money or live in these towns doesn't mean that you're destined to, succeed in life. Sports might be their thing. That might be the only thing they know or want to do.
No,
you feel that Fox Valley athletic kids are looking at athletics as their only way out, the same way kids in the ghetto do. You're telling me this with a straight face.
Well, and here's
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how the kids in the ghetto think, because I've never been there, but I know how some of the kids that I know out here and feel that that's their only way out.
Right, but as a person, I'm trying to tell you from when I hooped in Florida versus when I hooped in Crystal Lake, the mentality of my teammates was entirely different. So I'm trying to help you with this.
How so?
Well, listen.
I mean, how was the mentality different? Your people in Florida were just saying this is my only way out.
But hold on. I understand. I understand what Phil is saying, and it's
I hear
socioeconomic, piece. Is I've got a single mother who works 4 jobs. I'm raising my 3 kids, and I live on the south side of Chicago, and I am good at this sport. I get average grades to below average grades, and we don't have to go into how the school districts are different, because we know they are, because one school gets more money than the other school, and we understand that. And if you're a 22-year-old white girl who wants to be a middle school teacher, you have a choice to be in Crystal Lake or down in on the south side of Chicago, you're going to go. I'll go to Crystal Lake, right? Yeah. And now that they don't have that middle school teacher down here on the south side
of Chicago don't have that choice.
But I will say this is that I'd have to do a little research, Phil, but yes, they have more options, but I can show a lot of instances with kids who graduated with my kids who are still in Woodstock. They never quote unquote got out, right? But they had all the advantages to quote unquote get out, but they just never got out. Now they work, at a bar, at a sandwich place, or whatever, and they're still there. And in 20 years, you're going to come back and you're still going to see the same kids doing the same thing in Woodstock, right? So they didn't get out either.
I'm with you, and we joke often about the one-offs, and we can point out examples of. I'm saying, generally speaking, across athletics. If we're going to go to the story that we all understand where these kids are coming from, nobody in Crystal Lake is playing 21, and somebody that they're playing 21 against is getting shot at Crystal Castle.
No, that
doesn't happen.
That's correct. Right. Damon, good morning, brother. Damon K. Ross, absolutely one of my favorite people in the world. The kids in the ghetto feel they only have one way out because adults keep telling them that this is the only way. They are more than athletes and will only know that if the adults in their lives tell them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 100%, right?
So what do you
ingrained to them from a young age, and that they're being oppressed and held down. This is your only way out, when their parents should say, yeah, we aren't getting a fair shake, but you can make your choice to do it. This is obviously a way you've seen it done before many times, or at least that's what you've been told. But there are other options out there. I think what she's saying is they're being kind of, I don't want to be brainwashed, but you're kind of being brainwashed. This is your only way out. This is your only hope. When some of those kids, probably more than we'll ever know, are absolutely brilliant, but they're just not having their talents lost. They're not being able to use their talents because someone is saying this is your only way out, not through becoming a lawyer or a teacher or a basketball coach.
So Gary asks, is it the common way in society to look at sports scholarships as a way to get out of the poverty line?
Yes.
There you go.
And then, Scott, to clarify, a lot of times also it's not even just the parents that tell the kids it's athletics. The teachers at the school tell kids.
Yes. Why? So I should have done that. It's the adults. The
Yeah.
comment
Yeah.
that they made, a lot of the adults in their lives are saying, look, you don't have a shot in business, but as a sports feature or a sports, a player, you have a
Right.
much better chance. I think that's doing them a huge disservice because now
So
they're saying that your brain doesn't matter. It's your physicality.
Right. So if Crystal Lake, I'm told I can be anything I want to be, but if I go to Crane, I'm told, listen, unless you play ball of some sport or rap, you ain't gonna make it. And that's my teacher telling me that. That's a problem.
That's a
So
huge
now look, I'm a elementary school kid, middle school kid, high school kid. Kent Jones, hypothetically, has told me my whole life that the only way to get out is athletics. So let me get really, really good athletics so I don't have to worry about my friends being shot in front of me or drugs being sold in front of me every day on my way to school. Cool. So you've bred me to do the athletics. Now I get here thinking this is my only way out. When you guys are saying you chose to be an athlete, no, you told me this was my only way out since I was a kid. And I trusted you and I believed you. Now I'm getting paid as an athlete, but if I'm seeing things that, I'm getting millions, but I'm making Kent billions. Kent hasn't sweated in 10 years. I'm physically exhausting my body every day, and I'm getting millions and Kent's getting billions. Something's wrong here. If all these athletes are saying, hey, there should be some way.
You chose to do something based on they're saying we're going to take care of you this way. Just it shouldn't matter that your boss is making more than you. You chose and you accepted that offer to do something for them it's a business transaction.
Now again,
I don't think color of skin really has anything to do with
that.
They're
Gary says
profiting off of a white man just as much as they are as a black man.
Yeah, so Gary says it's interesting because here in Singapore, it's 100% the other way around. Yes, but Singapore has been voted and studied and is the most non-racial country in the world. So,
Right.
I mean,
we need to go there.
Yeah, right. So it's and it's hard. And he says, here it's not sports are not viewed or acknowledged as a practical occupation. Right.
Well,
here
sports is like God.
Well, yeah,
in a lot of ways,
people love sports more than they in sports.
Pay more attention to sports than their family.
Do anything, right? So
let me ask you a question, Scott. If you were, let's say, a musical artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm your agent. I represent you, or I'm the company that signed you, the record label that signed you, and I say, Scott, this is a great contract right here. You got great music. You're talented. Sign this contract. We'll take care of you. You find out for every dollar made, you get 10 cents off of your music. I still think at some point you'd be like, man, I signed a slave deal. Or as the artist, even though I chose it, I wasn't getting paid what I should be, especially when you're finding out that other people could have made more off a similar type of deal. You would not be happy with that contract. No matter what color you are.
Well, right, but yes and no. I mean, so I go into this contract knowing what it is. Do I know that if I did it on my own, I could make more? Yeah, but that's not my expertise. My expertise is making the music, and their expertise is getting it out to the people and selling it. Most artists don't know how to do the business end of it, and so I'm paying them. Is the 10% fair? I mean, probably not, but you know what?
Probably not. So look, if I'm a 17-year-old kid with a Nike contract, what do you think my area of expertise is?
Right, yeah.
But I have Nike in my face at 17. What do you think?
It's a starting point. It's a starting point, right? So
how much time do you?
I want 20.
But how much time do you think a 17-year-old kid from the ghetto has spent looking over contracts worth millions of dollars?
Zero.
So let's rewind here. Let's rewind just a second. I want to go back to me making millions and the
other guy making billions.
The man making billions. And here's what I want to say is, we have those people, all right. And I'll bring up LeBron James, for instance. LeBron James is a brilliant individual, absolutely brilliant. He's an incredible business owner. He is the producer of several shows. I mean, this guy, he has built a school to help people back in kids in low income areas back in
Akron.
Cleveland. Akron, that's right. Thank you. Yeah.
Ohio.
And he is absolutely phenomenal, right? So I'm going to say for him, to say that this is, or even go along with a Colin Kaepernick to say, hey, this is like slavery. Well, now he's the slave owner then, because he owns all these businesses. And he's now making more money from those businesses than he is perhaps from his sports contract, right? So how can you sit there and say, and that's hypocritical, right?
No, it's okay. Say, you guys are both my artists. Scott's contract is a nickel per dollar. Your contract, I looked out for you, is 80 cents per dollar.
Yep.
I can do the deal where I still make money and make sure that you're taken care of, or I can do the deal to make sure that you get crumbs. So if LeBron is doing deals with his friends and stuff where he's like, look, I'm going to get a small portion, but I'm going to make sure that you guys are getting what you're worth because I've been in these shoes and I understand how it feels. Jay-Z does the same thing musically. If you look at the deals that Jay-Z signs with his artists, he signed it and he created title to make sure that the artist was getting paid more than what they are over here, because he's gone out and said YouTube pays you a fraction of what you should, or these record labels are paying you a fraction of what you should. So he's creating his own label that's going to pay his artists more. So he is a billionaire, but he's making sure that the people around him that are doing the same craft are getting paid more than what they would under a different type of ownership and management.
His mentality is a little bit different because of where he's come from, and he understands, right? He's going, I'm going to help you because you're helping me. I'm going to give you a little bit more, right? So he has compassion, and he's taking, but he's basically been there, right? So he's a little bit more, I don't want to say flexible, but he's
there are
been there. A lot of these
these
people don't. It's just about dollars and cents. To him, it's actually about these people being people.
There are a lot of,
but he would tell you that he signed a slave deal when he was with Def Jam.
But that's what got him going. But that's what started him, and he expounded upon it. If he calls it a slave deal, right? He said, "I'll take that deal," and he's made the best of what that original shitty deal was, right?
Right. So when Colin says it's a slave deal, at one time they're both saying this was slavery, but this is how I'm moving without the slavery deal. And for Jay-Z,
the only difference I had to say when you call it a slave deal is slaves didn't have a choice, right? These people do. That's the big difference.
They don't have
slaves. They don't have to. They do it because it's a better way out. It's a means to an end.
I think that's conveniently allowing you not to see the point.
Well, then what's?
Yeah, good. So help me
understand. Yeah, help me see your point.
Because I'm saying the same thing too. Pro sport,
right? But I'm saying I have an inbox flooded of people like, "Are you serious, guys?" What I'm telling you is, if your situation is, I have to sign a deal to get out of the ghetto. Someone from your company is telling me this is a good deal. When I sign the paperwork, when I find out when I'm talking to the other coworkers is, nah, bro, they're taking all of your money, or you're getting paid this when you could have gotten paid that, which is in terms of signing a slave deal.
That happens all day long in contracts, though. There's you will accept something that's mutually beneficial, or maybe not exactly what you want, but it's a stepping stone to get to that next point to renegotiate, right? Because they're getting out of the ghetto by doing this. It's not ideal, but you know what? They have that option to get out, but that once they get themselves established, they can use their power and their knowledge to renegotiate.
But you guys are trying to say that because it was a stepping stone, it was okay. Scott, if I said, listen, I'll give you a job working for me and you'll make $500,000, but first you have to show me your boobs. You took it so you can get the money, but it doesn't mean that the way to get there was appropriate. There could have been another way to do it.
Potentially, sure.
So you wouldn't be like, well, he helped me get my way out the door. No, you would say, I shouldn't have had to do that to get this money.
So what you're saying? Hey, all the way from Switzerland, our boy Mark Hall in the house. How are you, buddy?
Mark Hall.
Look at that, right? So. What makes it not a slave deal, quote unquote?
Not a slave deal. Going back to the music side is understanding, hey, listen, if you go to Sony, if you go to Interscope, if you go to whatever, they're going to pay you, just for example's sake, 15 cents a album sold or whatever, a stream. Over here, it's going to be 75. Now, we still do have to make our profit because of the business and things in the marketing that we're going to do, but we're not going to gouge you in order to do so. What I'm saying is, for all of these athletes to feel, even Chappelle, why did Chappelle walk away from Comedy Central? It was a $50 million offer. And he asked you, what was your favorite show on Comedy Central before Chappelle's show? I made this company billions. And even though the contract said I was still supposed to make this percentage, they told me it was too much money for me to make. So they offered me this number instead of this number. And he says the same terminology. It was a slave deal. So what I'm trying to tell you guys, if you're hearing very common and familiar terminology over these contracts, it's not just a off the whim thing. There might be something to it. If I gave you $5 million, Kent, I know you would be happy. But at the same time, I knew that if you found out years later, me and you've been friends as long as we've been friends, and I gave you $5 million for a 21/6 the net deal, you're like, shoot, Phil looked out for me $5 million. But if you found out I could have given you $500 million, you'd be pissed. And you should be.
No.
For the same amount of work, I could have given you $500 million.
Right.
And I gave you 5.
But I said, hey, I agreed that 5 was good. Right.
You agreed to it.
Yeah.
However, I led you to believe that the 5 million was good.
Right. So then
I did.
Right. But and you made yours, and that's business, and that's what I'm saying. I said, hey, I agree, 5 million's good. Now somebody could have been whispering in my ear, you need more, you need more, you need more. Right now, let's go back to Magic Johnson, because he's absolutely, and thanks for listening, Magic. I absolutely love you.
I appreciate you, Magic.
He is and has been since I was a little kid my hero, right? And I want people to understand that, you should, and what this man does even yet today, still, he's my hero, right? And he's at the bargaining table with Dr. Buss in 1979 when he came into the NBA, and they said, hey, here's your rookie contract, $800,000. Now, this is, to me, one of the best to ever grace the court, if not the best point guard out there. And it's arguable, right? But I'm just saying. And Magic said, this is a slave deal. No, pushes the paper back. His dad says, Mr. Buss, could you please excuse us? He took his son out in the hall and he goes, what are you doing embarrassing us like this? I have worked 3 jobs for the last 30 years to keep food on the table for the family. And in all 30 years, haven't been able to make that amount of money. And you're turning that down because of why? You're going to walk back in there. You're going to apologize. You're going to sign that contract. Magic walks back in, apologizes, signs that contract. Right? Is that a slave deal?
Still a slave deal. He signed a slave deal to help his family, but he still signed a slave deal.
See, and I guess now, and that's where I'm having a hard time with that, because slavery.
The terminology is just saying that I'm working this hard for crumbs, big crumbs, but essentially crumbs. Right. Going back to Chappelle, if I made you guys billions, if you give me 1 million and I made you billions, that's not equal pay for what I brought to the table.
Right. So as Gary says, won't that quote unquote slave deal viewpoint be applicable to everything else outside?
I'm so glad Gary did this. How many people do you know that are happy with their current paycheck?
I am.
It appears most people in their 9-to-5s feel they signed a slave deal too. But it's perfectly acceptable when everyone else says the same thing about aren't 9-to-5s giving the opportunity to provide for their families? Aren't 9-to-5s a stepping stone to be able to but in any other situation, it's okay to say I'm not getting paid my worth unless you're an athlete.
So, and Gary says, if a deal's a deal, won't retrospectiveness be an illogical excuse to point out what it could have, should have?
Every one of those things that you just described, Phil, you have that choice to accept it or not, whether it's a sports team contract or your 9-to-5 job. You're accepting that. Now, the circumstances could be somewhat different, right? But you are choosing to take that at that point, and hopefully you can use that as a stepping stone to better what you're doing and to increase your value, right, or get paid more what you're worth. But you have to, I mean, we all have to pay our dues. And granted, I understand that what
Right.
you're getting is between black and white, the differences, right, as far as, a slave deal. But I mean, it's all in how you look at it and what you're willing to fight for and what you're willing to choose and what you're willing to settle for, right? I mean, there's certain things that you can't change, like as far as the rules of the game or who it's coming from, but you can choose how you decide to play that game or how you decide to, play your card, so to speak, right? I mean,
so if we take a look at this and let's see what Damon says. Damon says the issue with athletes is they keep signing these deals. In contract negotiations, you always have a choice to reject and counter.
Right.
If you can't get your counter, you have a choice to not
basically
sign
walk
and move
away.
on.
Right.
And in slavery, I didn't speak the language here. I came in, you had shackles around my neck, ankles, wrists, and you whipped me, right? And
Well, you had full control.
As if I'm African American and I'm standing next to Phil, guess what? I'm not. Whoever's selling me is like glad that Phil went in front of me because they got a lot of money for Phil, and they look at me like, look at that old crumply old, right?
We don't want him.
What's he going to do, right? So the idea is when I think of slavery, and this is the tough part, and that's why I love the bridge. The tough part is, as a white guy, what I know of slavery is this: you had no choice. You came in shackled. You didn't, and I love that in the history books we hear the romantic story of, hey, we said come on over and it's a better life. No, you shackled these people, shoved them on a boat, and if they survived, then the rich white people in this nation bought you. You didn't even know English. You couldn't speak the language. You were stuck. This is it. And if you stepped out of line, you got beat down or killed or lynched or
What
whatever.
happened to Colin?
Right?
What happened to Colin? If you step out of line, but go ahead and listen.
Right. So
I got to watch this now. Now
so
I know
glad you said if you step
right?
out of line. I'm so glad you said if you step out of line, you get handled. What happened to Colin? He stepped out of line and he got handled, similar to what a slave would have happened to them.
Well,
you can't say certain things because we own you, similar to what a slave is told.
Well, but he did. But let's be honest on the same side of this. Now that I understand Colin Kaepernick a little bit better, is he decided to make a choice when he was being recruited by every major college in America and by professional baseball teams to go baseball, when he had no letters at all or anything about football, and he says, I'm gonna be a quarterback. Well, no, you were a pitcher. You were a hell of a pitcher. You were one of the best in the nation, and you chose to not listen to the world and said, nope, I'm a quarterback. I'm a quarterback, which at the same time, as a dad and as a coach, I'm like, good for you for chasing your dreams. Right?
He made his choice,
right?
right?
Now,
could have gone bad on him.
And why I bring that up is his style of being a quarterback is very, very limited in years, just because of how aggressive he was at running and whatnot, right? So we could argue, and there are people who could argue, that he was on the backside of his career when he decided to. Go ahead, Phil. Right?
I didn't hear half as much talk about his performance as a quarterback prior to him kneeling as I did after he kneeled. After he kneeled, people critiqued the hell out of his quarterbacking. Prior to him kneeling,
well, let me ask you this.
Well, that brought more attention to
it. Yeah, let me ask you this. How closely did you follow him? How closely did right?
The same amount. Hey, look, my consistency has been the same.
Correct.
The report on him has changed since he kneeled.
No. So
since he got out of line,
they don't like it. But what happened is now we've moved him from being not the story to a story. So those critiques on his playing ability were there. It just wasn't the forefront. Right. Okay. So now that we've moved to the front of it, yes, now we're going to hear those. And that's why you would hear that instead of before. Right. Because, right. And I understand. I absolutely understand what you're saying, but we can't always. We can't, as a society, not as a color, just as a society, take what's out there on social media, unless, of course, you're tuned into 21.6 The Net and Bridging
Hey,
Attention. But I mean, now you've got me thinking, right, Phil? And this is, and people ask me. There's two shows. My Friday morning shows are the ones that I love the best. But now with our contract, you've got me thinking that this is a slave deal for you.
no. I mean, me and you understand what our contract is, right?
Right.
Now,
Right.
if I was like, if I pulled up to the station and in a hoopty, and you were driving away from the station in a Bentley, then we'd reevaluate our contract, and I'd say, Kent, what's up with this? Because you have a Bentley and I'm, public transportation.
And what people, and here's what I want people to understand. Truly, we're about the most generous business that there is. The way we have things written up, really, to put money into our talent's pocket. But anyway,
which is why I rock with you. But I'm saying, if it got to that point where I'm like, man, Kent's taking a private jet from Wonder Lake to McHenry.
Well, it was a helicopter. Rest his soul.
Oh my God! All right, you guys.
Right. So Jessica Rose, hi Jess, welcome in, sister. Glad you're here. I agree. I accept it or change it, regardless of your circumstances. We all have to make our choice: follow the morals or the money. Right now, here's the great thing: is Jay-Z. I can't speak. I don't know LeBron's business well enough. I can speak about Magic. Magic does give more and more back, and he makes sure that the people who take care of him are well taken care of. And it's not I don't think it's a slave situation there. But at the same time, I haven't seen any of these people making millions of dollars go, you know what? Well, you know what? This doesn't make any sense. Screw the NBA, screw the NFL. We're going to make our own over here, and guess what? We're going to make sure that it's not that situation.
The big three.
What?
The big three.
The big three.
I mean, they're actually like the different G leagues and stuff like that. Like it's in the works, if not, and other things are attempted to be made. It's just the capital as far as getting started, but it's to the point where it's going to happen. And they're even talking about the same thing as far as on the collegiate side, having a league for college players where you can get paid if NCAA refuses to continues to refuse to pay their players.
Right.
Which is why they finally started to agree to it, because it was in the works of being created. Okay, if you're not going to pay us, we'll just go play over here in college versus over here. So it's happening.
Yeah. And now athletes can be paid. I mean, that's been passed, right? They've created that. Gary says, I don't have a license or vehicle in my 27 years of working, but I still won't call my job a slave contract if a similar colleague drives a car to work.
I hate to do it, but I gotta bounce.
Thanks for being here,
Phil. Great conversation.
So
see you when you get back in town.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So, all right. Be good, man.
Yes, sir. You too.
And I understand, Phil, what you're saying. Thanks, God. I understand what you're saying. I have a hard time associating slavery with $140 million contracts.
Again, as I said to Scott, I think you're allowing that word slavery to make you miss the point. It's not saying as mandatory you're going to have to as like the slave situation. However, what it is saying is I'm working this hard and I'm getting this while master's getting that. And that's what they're saying. And when you're talking about, you have a choice. Right. If I were to tell you, hey, Kent, you're living in a situation where your kids are in danger, people around you are getting shot, and you're a Burger King employee, not that I'm knocking them, or you can sign this $800,000 contract, what would you do?
Well,
you'd make sure that your family got out of Dodge.
Well, I understand, but words have to have a meaning, right? And the word slavery has a meaning.
again, if you feel that I can't say what I want, I can't be honest about situations, I'm working hard for someone else to get the pay. What they're saying is that does align very heavily to slaves. Now, it's not but it's raising awareness that, hey, something's wrong with these contracts that people are having us sign. And yes, you have the choice to sign them or go back to the ghetto or wherever you're from. But there's also the choice of, why couldn't we set up these deals that is going to allow our athletes or talents or artists to make what they should be making versus what we're duping them into making. Chappelle did this where he's talking about, these people are telling me that this is a good deal only to find out that they were in on it. They were in on knowing that I was going to get screwed out of my money, but they were going to get a piece of the pie. But I'm looking at them. I'm trusting Kent Jones that he's going to get me a good deal, but he's in cahoots with Scott.
Right. So Jessica says, how do you think real slaves would feel hearing us compare the two?
Proud. I would, if I was a slave and Elijah was a star athlete, if he was LeBron and I spoke up that this isn't right, and Elijah was speaking up, this isn't right, I shouldn't be getting paid this. If I'm putting in the work and I could get paid this isn't how we should be doing things, I'd be proud. I'm super glad that he's not beaten and lynched, but I'm proud of him for saying, I should be getting paid more than this, and it's capable of us doing so. And if I'm watching that I'm making you guys billions, and you with an S, you think I should be happy with $1 million? No.
It's not,
I'd be proud.
It's not $1 million, it's hundreds of millions.
I understand that, but the hundreds of millions doesn't even come from their professional contract. The hundreds of millions, if you look at Michael Jordan's contract, Michael Jordan was one of the lowest paid stars. His millions came from Nike. Not even what he did as an athlete.
Which in your definition was a slave deal.
So, but that's not even me. That's him. Again, said that this contract was this. And when he looked to his right or his left, that wasn't okay. So if you're looking at all of these athletes, they're having to get their millions, not even from the sport. So we're saying the sport pays you guys hundreds of millions. Most situations, no, it does not. Your endorsements pay you hundreds of millions. And why did the endorsement pay you hundreds of millions? Because you make those companies billions.
Okay.
So that's why they're saying this is a situation, because if I am LeBron James and I made you guys $1 billion for the season and I got 30 million.
So for it not to be a slave deal, the players should be making the billions and the company should only be making the millions.
No.
Is that correct?
What I'm saying is, again, me and you being me and you.
Right.
If I know that I could have paid Kent Jones $500 million and I paid him $5 million, morally to me, that doesn't sit right.
Right.
If I know that there was budget to move around and I know that I wouldn't have reached this $1 billion platform if it wasn't for Kent Jones in my life, I couldn't, me personally, morally couldn't sleep well at night giving you $5 million and having Mark Hall or Andrew Hogle tell you, oh man, it's a great deal with Phil. And I'll pay you guys $1 million just to tell Kent to settle with this $5 million, knowing that I can give you $500 million. That's not okay.
Morally for you, correct, but we live in a capitalist country, right? And
what was the number one reason for slavery again? Capital.
Right.
Capital.
So why then? Why am I not hearing white or Spanish or anybody referring to these deals as slave deals? Okay, so
you don't see other races speak up on a lot of topics. And at the same time, if you look at, like when you watch sports, how many non-black minorities are you looking for to win the game for you?
So say that
when you watch an NBA game, how many non-black athletes are you thinking that's really going to just determine the flow of the game?
I mean, it depends what team you're watching, I suppose.
Kit, we've had this conversation. We've talked about if there were no black athletes in the NBA, it'd be a 3-point contest.
Well, that's what it is now anyway.
The
NBA is a bad product.
They got some dunks.
That's horrible, right?
College basketball.
Right. Yeah.
NFL.
Right. Yeah. I mean, right. So would Collins' usage of the word slavery contract be a way to hype the issue so that it becomes a social backlash against the U.S. definition of capitalism?
I would say yes if it was only Colin, if it was only this one time, and if it was only for this past, since Colin has got himself in, let's just say, hot water. If it's been repeated from multiple athletes for decades now, then no. I would say that people are conveniently trying to dismiss, sweep under the rug, ignore that multiple athletes across multiple sports have all come to the same conclusion, or multiple entertainers or multiple celebrities are all saying the same things. I think that for certain people, it's much easier to dismiss the validity of what's being said versus actually seeing if there's some truth to it, which is why Dave Chappelle asked people to go to the books for those who work at that television station to see what was made and see what was paid.
Right. And no, and I know Sal says Spaniards, or did you mean to say Latinos? No, I was thinking of world football, where there's a lot of Spanish people playing soccer. Right. So not the Latinos, which would incorporate our good friends from Mexico as well. Right. So, yeah, I said what I said for a reason, because we don't hear that. Right. So that's why I say words have to have meaning. Right. Now, and listen, people, I'm going to tell you, we got 4 minutes left. I'm going to tell you, since I was a little kid, I've always thought it was crazy and a little bit like slave trade. How can I say, all right, Phil, we're moving you over to Chicago? Well, my family's here and I've got 3 more years. Yep. Nope. You're gone. We don't have a say. You got to go. Now, listen, I have felt that way and said that for a long time. It's not just what Colin has said. Hey man, we have a contract, I'm here. You should be able to ask me if that's what I want to do or if I want to finish out my contract. That's not the way professional sports works. Your usefulness for this company is done so long, but this company over here is going to buy the rest of your contract, right? And you have to uproot your family and go or whatever, right? And it's a weird thing. At the same time, you have that ability to go, when's enough? I've made my millions, hundreds of millions. I'm worth a $500 million, but I still choose to be in this slave contract, right? So that's people's greed. That's people's. So you say, okay, I'll get out there and wave the banner and raise the flag that this is a slave contract. But I've already my net worth is $500 million, and I don't think that's enough for me. So I'm going to continue in this. What kind of sense does that make?
I mean, that's why Kyrie's like not really stressed about not coming back.
Right.
He's choosing to not have to participate in the trade no more.
Right. Right. Yeah. Jessica
But
Rose.
you watch, if you watch, the ones who are allowed to speak up are the ones who make that industry the most money. If you don't make them as much money as a LeBron James or a Kyrie, and you speak up and you say anything out of Dodge, watch what happens to you.
Yeah. Yeah. There. Then stop playing. What will happen if these quote unquote slave owners, what will they do if everybody stops signing contracts? Right.
It's going to happen. But again, what we're trying to say is if you notice any of the feedback hasn't been on, well, morally it is wrong to do it. Everything's saying, well, then just don't sign the contract. And I'm asking you guys to stop and listen to what's being said. Again, if I told Scott, show me your boobs before I hire you, and Scott signed, no one would tell Scott or any female who hired for a job, well, you signed the contract. Everybody in the world would say, well, you shouldn't have had to do that for the job. Only with athletes is the feedback, well, they should stop signing those contracts and deal with whatever they have to deal with to get that check. And I don't think morally anyone else would be okay with that same sentiment or feedback if they had to do something inappropriate to get a paycheck.
But I don't think athletes are doing anything inappropriate.
Athletes are being asked to athletes are asking to settle for less than what they should be making, even though it's a lot more than other people. And there's something happening that all these athletes across different verticals are all coming to the same conclusion. Not all, but a lot of them are coming to the same conclusion. So I'm saying we'll do it this way. As I've told you in the past, remember this conversation. And we'll leave it like that. Remember this conversation.
No, and that's why I love this show. That's why I love you, Phil. Right? But
I love you too.
The idea is as we meet on the bridge and try to learn and move forward is how do we do that, right?
Right.
And both sides have to maintain that open-mindedness.
Right. So let me ask you this: what happens if next year you find out that a Players Basketball Association is being created in order to allow players to get paid more for their contracts than what they were getting paid in traditional NBA? Would then people be saying, "Oh shoot, they were right, it was bad"? Or
so everything must be cutting out because Sal is like, Latinos incorporate all of Latin America, not just Mexicans. Kent, please elaborate why would Spaniards speaking up regarding soccer? I don't see what that had to do with what Phil was saying. Well, my friend, it's because they're signing contracts to play professional sports too. Okay. So if all sports contracts are slave contracts, why aren't they speaking up about slavery as well? So hopefully your audio, you might want to unplug your router and plug it back in so you can get the Wi-Fi a little bit better, right? And Damon, would the leagues be wrong for taking away the platform for the athletes to make their wages?
They wouldn't do that because then the league wouldn't have their wages because there's no one to make the money for them. But again, if you see that another platform is going to be created,
Lionel Messi should
we'll revisit it. We'll revisit it.
Hey, all that I'm saying is, I can't get mad watching Colin Kaepernick's. I watch it. There are some things in there that I fundamentally disagree with, and one of the things I fundamentally disagree with this is he doesn't offer any solution. Right. So he brings up play the right way means play the white way, but he doesn't elaborate on how to fix that. Right now, maybe the next season does. There's one season of this with 6 episodes. But at this point, my fundamental piece is he's there and it's called gaslighting, trying to stir the emotion without giving any solutions, like what we do here. Well, tell me, how do we fix this? Tell me, what is it? When will it not be that? And that's where we have to start saying, okay, I have never ever had a problem with Kaepernick, not once. And the red, white, and blue that flies gives him the freedom to do what he wants and protest how he wants and for what he wants, right? And he is a brilliant individual, and this Netflix series that he's doing really shows that. I mean, he's a smart guy. This is well thought out. He's very articulate. You learn that he's not just a quote unquote dumb jock, right?
Right.
And Damon he says, "Hey, I'm not asking if the leagues would do it. Would they be morally wrong for shutting down their respective leagues?"
They wouldn't be morally wrong. I think they'd be dumb for them, because I do feel that these athletes appear to be this close to creating their own anyway. Again, going back to what they were going to do with college players. So if you do it, things like the Big Three have already been created. It's really easy to make a Big Five.
And that's that 3-on-3 league, right?
That's the 3-on-3 league where players who, whatever,
players,
are retired players are now still playing in arenas and still making money. So if they drop that, that's going to open the opportunity.
They're not making as much money as the league. League still
not as much money. Well, it's also because they're not selling as many jerseys or the TV. As soon as all that stuff starts to happen and that swing shift, if the arenas of the Big Three were just as packed as the playoffs, those contracts increase.
Right, and then the Big Three, the league makes more money. Because
and also the athletes would. From what I understand, the contracts for the Big Three, relative to what's being brought in, are higher than the league.
Yeah. So I mean, it'll never be that, because the business has to. I mean, the league has to make money to survive.
But hear what I'm saying. Relative to what's brought in, their percentage is higher.
But it's a good thing that Damon brings up again, right? Would it be morally wrong for shutting down the respective leagues because now you don't give them a way out?
What I've already responded. If they shut it down, with people having the money, like how LeBron's creating thing and Jay-Z created, they would create their own league within a year or two.
Yeah.
And then they would be able to have contracts for the players' interest versus just the ownership's interest. I think maybe in the past to do so, sure. At this point, try it. Again, with NCAA, they didn't want to pay the people, so they were going to create their own. Now NCAA got their stuff together. Try it, and we're gonna put you out of business as far as the money side for our athletes. If you do that with NBA players and professional players, you're going to see another league created, and the ownership's going to look a lot different.
Yeah, and it very well could, and that's okay. It very well could, but at the same time, at a point in time, it'll end up being that as well, right? Again, it'll come back to wait. This league is, well, we have to make this much because of this, and this, and that's why now you have this union to back you, and when it comes down to it in a capitalist society, it's going to be the same thing all over again. It may start slower, right?
Greed implements everywhere, but again, they wouldn't have created a players association if the ownership was doing what they were supposed to in the first place. They had to have the players association to protect the players in all aspects.
Okay, so you're saying they're not doing their job then?
No. What I'm saying is something had to be a different entity to be able to check ownership. Like, hey,
right.
This is a bad idea for our athletes. You're not protecting them or their best interests at all. What are you doing?
Right.
Why else would they create that?
Well, I get that, but
there would not be a need for.
If it's still a slave contract now, they're still not doing what they're supposed to be doing for their players.
Okay. True, but what I'm saying is, even then, it's still better than what it would be.
Okay, I go with that.
So it's not rock bottom. It's here, but it still should be here. But if this wasn't here, it would be this. That's a problem.
Yeah, and Damon says, "Hey, it'll be harder than it sounds, though. I don't think it has to be done if the disapproval of pay is that high. They will lose income for a bigger piece of a smaller pie."
I do think that it would be harder as far as because who owns media, right? Not the athletes. So they could be blackballed as far as, okay, well, we're not going to show this league on these channels. And then I think something else would be created. It may take more time, but it would still get done.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an overnight solution.
Yeah.
But
again, like you said, if I got a $500 million nest egg, I'd be willing to take my $500 nest egg, chill for 3 years to create something that I knew for myself and for the people behind me will be taken care of as they should be financially. I'd be cool with that.
Right. But the greed of these players, right? How many of these players give most of their proceeds and pay to help kids get out? Right. So 75% of their income, if they truly wanted to make it not a slave deal, wouldn't they be giving more and more and more and more back? Say, hey, I can live off. I get flown around the country. I don't pay a bill at a hotel. I would be okay with $100,000 a year. So the other $20,900,999, I'm going to donate to the inner city so that the kids that don't have this athletic prowess can get out. And that doesn't happen either.
I think a lot of athletes give a lot more money than what is promoted in the media. And I think that people who say that same sentiment, when you ask most 9 to 5 individuals how much they give for stuff like that, their answer is zero.
Yeah.
So to lecture an athlete what they should give if the person's giving nothing, that's a tough argument.
Well, I'm not telling them what they should do. I'm just saying is if only 2% of the athletes make it into the pros and get out, wouldn't we throw our money at creating something different to let the majority get out?
Again, and you're seeing pro-am leagues, you're seeing CBA, G leagues, you're seeing things like that are okay.
You're staying in the sport. You're staying in the sports arena, right? Why aren't I creating a science lab? You know, like LeBron. They
are. Like, again, that's what Nipsey had created when they shot him in front of the place that he had bought. Was tech in Compton for the youth. T.I. just bought Bankhead so he can have affordable housing in what used to be his hood. He bought that area, is buying more and more of that area to have affordable housing. So it's happening. It's just not talked about as much as like crime in Chicago.
Well, right. And what about the athletes that don't have a huge quote unquote nest egg?
Oh, but I thought all athletes were paid all these oodles of money. No, and especially if you look at the time that you're in the league paid. So let's say that most athletes, they get in at like 19, 20, and you're done before 30. You still have X amount of years of your life that whatever you made, you still have to survive off of.
Yeah, and boy, hard surviving off $500 million.
No. Because again, don't do that, because those contracts for the sport is not $500 million. The endorsements may be, but not all athletes get endorsements.
But
not all athletes get it. The top ones do, and that's not even all of them.
They all get endorsements. Some just don't sell shoes. I mean, they endorse them because you're wearing we'll pay you to wear our Nikes. We'll pay you to wear our hoodie, right? They don't have a shoe named after them like Kobe, LeBron, Michael, KD, those people.
What you're saying is where the $500 million comes from. Yes, no, they don't.
Right.
So
right.
to act as all of them do, it's not true.
No, it's not true. But they're all millionaires. We could say that. We can say that.
They are. At least most of them are millionaires. I mean, I had a friend who
I'm speaking of the NBA. I don't know what the NFL does.
I had a friend who played for the Heat. His contract was $200,000 for the year.
What year?
This was 2006.
Yeah. So now the league minimum now, right, is like $2 or $3 million in the NBA. That's the league minimum. So maybe in the league minimum, was he playing for, or was he on the G League?
No, he got signed on, but like it wasn't like crazy minutes or anything like that.
Right. So
okay.
Right. So again, today they have. I mean, they didn't have league minimums back then. When like when Magic and Bird, Dr. J were around. That's why most of those guys had to sell cars in the off season. They had to have a job in the off season, right? But the NBA.
Okay, so real quick, most people don't know that though. Most people thought that they were just good financially because they were just stars and should just shut up and dribble.
Oh no, yeah, a lot of them. I mean, this is back in the day when the guys would smoke at halftime or at timeout, right?
but I don't think ownership at that time. I don't think ownership sold cars.
No, ownership was and that's any capitalist. The business always makes more than the employees. That's the capitalist. Right.
Kent, do you think that Magic Johnson should have to sell cars after he does what he does? No,
that's a full. I mean, it is a full-time job now. These guys don't ever stop playing, And back then, though, yeah, they did. Right. I mean, back then it was like, hey, your season goes from October through February. Because there was only 5 teams or whatever. And we're gonna, back in the 60s and 70s, they got paid dirt. And so they had to have other jobs. Some were teachers, it was an interesting thing. But let's.
Can you imagine Kyrie Irving as your like history teacher or something telling you the world is flat? Like you just watched him destroy it too.
Right. And I mean, if we take a look at that, then, let's move away from sports and say every school district, the teachers have slave contracts.
So look, I'm so glad you're doing this. Sometimes, and we've talked about like with race, whatever, sometimes we get so caught up in fighting for one thing against one thing. We don't understand that if we actually understood it here, we could push more for it over here.
Right.
I feel just as passionate about the athlete thing and the slave contracts as I do for teachers' contracts. I know teachers who go above and beyond, lose sleep, fall asleep with their phones open, exhausted, doing lesson plans, and aren't paid a fraction of what they should. I think we should push to get slave deals stopped for them.
Right.
But is everyone going to push back against me because I use the term slave deals? Are we going to understand and agree teachers aren't paid what they're supposed to?
Yeah, and yes, I will say that I still have a hard, because of the word slavery and what I see as slavery. I still have, because we have choices, I still have a very hard, and I understand what you're saying. And yes, I am getting hung up on that word, right? Because I still think words have meanings. So yes, is it unfair? Absolutely. I think that it's unfair. I think an athlete should be paid commission. You take a look at all the money that Shaquille O'Neal made playing in the NBA, and he couldn't make a free throw. I'd have been like, hey, let's make this contract where you hit 45% of your free throws, you earn this. You hit 60% of your free throws, you earn more.
So one of the most dominant post players ever wasn't contributing to his team.
No, he was. I'm just saying.
Because of free throws.
I'm just saying, commission-based contracts could be a lot better, right?
Rodman doesn't get paid because he didn't score.
It depends how you build his contract. He was a defender and a rebounder. You average 20 rebounds, and then we'll pay you this, right? So that's why I say is you look at everybody's, and if you pay commission, that means the earning potential is open. So you might be able to make that $500 million 1 year, and as an owner, I'm like, damn, all right, well, he rolled me for that, but that's the deal we had, and we did this. So I mean, same thing. If you're a pitcher, yep, yeah, hey, you got to get this many strikeouts and pitch this many innings and throw, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And if you do this and this, we're going to pay you here. If you don't, we're going to pay you here. It's a pay to play, right? So, or play to pay, or whatever you want to call it. But the idea
I just noticed we're at 10:15.
Yeah, I know we've run over. No, I've let it roll over because this is a good conversation.
Okay, I'm with it. Let's keep going.
So, but that's where I'm saying. I mean, Demond is a teacher, and the passion in what he does in his education, because I know him personally. Yeah, he gets paid way too. He's worth a lot more. Right. And I know that. Right.
But if he were to come to me and he's like, look, I'm a teacher. I get up at 5. I don't finish grading papers until after 10. I'm paid the number the teachers are paid.
Yep.
I feel like my slave deal. Rather than debate him on the term slave deal, like I get what he's saying. I'm doing all of this extra work above and beyond to make sure that this school district gets this grading or is looked at as one of the top schools in their district or whatever. And the school gets this bonus for their performance. I don't.
No,
I would say that's not a good deal for Desmond. I wouldn't sit here and be like, but you signed that contract, bro.
Yeah, see, he'll even say I'm severely underpaid. I agree, right?
But no one would if no one else heard this conversation, no one would respond to him with, but you signed that contract.
Right. And that's where I'm saying is the word, and I understand what you're saying.
Even if he said I'm in a slave deal as a teacher.
But it's like this. Phil. The word slavery to me is uncomfortable, and it brings a negative connotation. The N-word is also very uncomfortable and brings a negative connotation.
Right.
However, in the African American circles, you use both of them very freely.
Right. Okay.
And so what I'm saying is that word means something different to me, perhaps, than it does to African Americans, perhaps. Is that safe?
I feel like as far as the N-word is concerned, like I don't think that Pierre means that I'm an ignorant black person and a thug when he calls me the N-word,
right?
Versus Margaret and Coles and Crystal Lake,
right?
As far as the slave deal, if Desmond were to say I'm in a slave deal as a teacher, I get it. You're working harder than you should have to for someone else to make all the money. You don't get any of the awards, and if you speak out of line, they'll fire you.
Yep.
I get it. I'm not going to respond back with, well, you're not being with it. I understand where he's coming from. You're overworked and you're underpaid, bro. You're not appreciated at all. And they'll kill you. They'll take you off the plantation if you get out of line. I know what that means.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is where I would come from, I'd be like, yeah, you're getting the wrong end of this deal, bro. You're putting way too much time, effort, money, da 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 da, right? But I wouldn't bring up with Damon because he's African American. It's a slave deal. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So you probably shouldn't say that. But what I would really, and I don't know, maybe Damon has a different opinion about. What I would ask is that when people say, when people, like if you hear black people say I'm in a slave deal, don't get so caught up on, well, you're not being lynched, so you should appreciate. What the point is that they feel they're in a situation where their strength is being taken advantage of.
Right.
And sometimes they feel in situations, if you get out of line, you're kicked off the plantation. So I would say, if the point of unfair pay is the main focus, then use language that will allow your point to be heard. I think people are hearing it because we're having conversations about it and we're talking through it.
We are here, but the people watching the Netflix, all right. So if I feel, and I go, okay, let me see what this idiot says or whatever, right? And again, there you got your haters out there for what Colin has done and what he has stood up for and who he is. I mean, he's a good guy. He's a good guy, right?
Right.
I haven't had a drink with him or anything like that, but from what I've learned about this man, again, very intelligent, very calculated, and he's got the freedom to do what he did, is that a lot of people will turn off that show because of the word slavery. Oh, yeah. Don't tell me that. You made millions of dollars in this slavery. Then that's what I'm saying is that a lot of people.
I understand that. And like what Desmond said, I would say this: if the point is unfair pay, the main focus, then use language that allow your point to be heard. Okay. When LeBron talked about any topic, he was told to shut up and dribble. If you're on a plantation, you're not allowed to be educated in the first place. People are always going to find. We've talked about this, Kent. Find me a protest in history that was acceptable. None of them were. None of the terminology of a person in these situations who were speaking up about the unfairness of the situation is going to be received all well.
But it was with that example of LeBron, it was not his employers. That was a reporter said that.
And what I'm saying is what you said was people who are watching the Netflix special will have a problem. They're not Colin's employers.
Right.
They're someone else. Okay, so the same thing. But what I'm saying is if Colin said a slave deal, people will say this guy's an idiot. LeBron could say, well, we're trying to help NBA players not have a slave deal. Well, shut up and dribble. But if Kent Jones hears Magic Johnson say, well, we're creating this league so that players aren't in slave deals anymore. Well, shit, I like Magic. Maybe there's something to this because this is the third person, the fifth person, the 10th person who has said this terminology.
Well, I would still have an issue, even though it's my boy Magic, right? I mean, I had to take 3 days off of work when he announced that he was HIV positive. I mean, it rocked my world, right? So then I had to learn about that disease, right? And anyway, so I think a lot of it is language, and like I said, I think with this special, as you watch it, there's a lot of, I don't want to call it race baiting, but maybe gaslighting. He throws a lot of issues out there and just lets them hang and doesn't address them necessarily. And because of this show, I understand what he's saying, but to somebody who doesn't tune in on a weekly basis to Bridging Civil Tension, Phil, you will see this and go,
right.
Or much like High on the Hog, if they, you wouldn't continue to watch the whole thing.
Right.
And unfortunately, as we've said, this is sometimes the best way to educate people is through this.
Like the episode that I watched where they were talking about the ugly baby. right? And they had the white ones versus the black ones. And they were asking the kids which one's the bad one, which one's the ugly one, which one's and how the kids just kept pointing to the black one, the black one, the black one, the black one, the black. All these terrible things of what's not what's portrayed as not beautiful, what's bad, what's ugly, what's horrible,
Right.
which one, all that stuff. And this is maybe as an African American, whatever, I wasn't upset that he didn't give a resolution for it. I understood that he just highlighted it. That
Sure.
this is something that is portrayed in the media to make people feel like black is not beautiful.
No, that's true.
I applauded that he raised awareness of it and then kept it moving with the adorable homecoming story.
Right.
More so than gaslighting the issue. Yeah, he brought it up with no solution, but he's also making people aware that this is stuff that happens openly.
Yeah, no, and yeah, and I have to play both sides of that because, and I do understand that as well. I mean, again, if it wasn't for this show and the growth that I've learned and earned through this show, I would there's that, and I always try to go with my initial reaction because that's what's bred into me, right? That's what's bred into me, right? So and that's why and instead of dismissing it, that's why I bring it up and we talk about those. Right. So the Damon says the conversation is still focused on the word slavery. The energy used on justifying using the word slavery could be used to further pushing the main conversation forward. But let me answer that, Damon. The reason is, and I understand and I appreciate where you're going with this, and the reason is I'm probably more stuck on it than Phil, right? And when I'm more stuck on it, I'm gonna keep beating a dead horse till I understand a bit, right? But that's how I have to learn and grow. Now, there's a lot that I'm taking away from this conversation and understanding, and we can feel that civil tension. That's why it's called bridging civil tension. But again, we all don't, as we've said several times, we all don't start at the same starting point.
Right.
So because I'm at a different starting point to get up to understanding race relation and race issues, I have to really chew on some things sometimes. Right. And yes, and yes, as I stated, the way that pro sports works, I've always questioned. It is just to me weird, right? And but it is what it is, right? And yes, I understand what he's saying is, yeah, take a look at this. Is yep, all right. Well, we're going to trade Kent for Phil. We use the word trade, right, in professional sports, right? We're gonna, hey, I'll trade you a horse and 3 pigs for Kent. Hey, I don't want a player, just give me money in return, and I want to trade you him. So there is that. So when you take a look at the language again that we use in professional sports and whatnot, it again bleeds back to, what we did with human beings, many years ago. So. So it's to me, I mean, you don't see a plumber company we'll use Gold Shield services because we love them, who do heating and electrician, and you don't see them go, hey, you know what, Phil, I know you run an electrical company and I'm going to trade you Kent. Now he's a good electrician, but you're going to pay him and he's getting paid this, and you're going to send me over Demond because we like his abilities better. So we're going to take him from 312 electrical and put him over on Gold Shield. We're just going to make that trade. Right. You don't hear that. We're going to trade a CEO. You don't hear that either, do you? Right? But
and Kent, when you get there, this new team is in Nebraska. Now your family is going to stay in Wonder Lake.
Yeah.
But you got to be cool with it for the next 10 years because we're going to pay you a lot, but you don't get to see your family growing up though.
Yeah.
And and today's Friday, you'll be there on Monday to perform.
You'll be there. Yeah. Well, you'll be there Monday. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of that. And I know, guys, we took this an extra half hour over, and I appreciate everybody for doing that and listening and paying attention. But I just felt that we had a good conversation. I didn't want to cut it off there. right?
Right.
Damon, absolutely love who you are, love what you do, and love how you do it. You're always welcome. I can send you a link. You're always welcome on this show. You know that. Damon K. Ross, they've been a big part of 21.6 the Net since its inception. So, you know, and that's the fun part of it. So we've got a jolt. I know you're busy today, Phil. Thanks for taking some time out of your day. I absolutely love you, brother, for
Love
who
you
you
too.
are and how you do. And I want you to know that's what we do. We talk about some tough things. We try to help each other,
Right.
and that's bridging civil tension. So,
Always.
all right,
Always.
man, be good. I know it's a tough day for you, but enjoy also the baby shower and have a safe trip back. We'll see you next week, brother.
Love you, man.
All right, take
Thank
it.
God for tuning in.